Now let's bring back Nolan Finley and Zoe Clark to talk about what happens after the Mackinac Policy Conference. What do we go home with?
Well, that's always the big question, Steve. I mean, what we do with all of these fine ideas and this, fancy talking that goes on up here. What do we do when we get home? Hopefully, we go back with some sort of sense of mission. Hopefully go back with our lawmakers and policymakers more aligned with what needs to be done over these next few months. But, it is always, that's always the
So
challenge.
it's the real question, right? I mean, what do we specifically go back
What we're going to
with,
go
right?
back to is election 2024.
Well, right, yeah.
I mean, let's not forget that all of these conversations are not happening, in a vacuum.
And we're already talking about election 2026 up here.
Yeah.
I know.
I mean, there are folks, Mark Hackle said he was might run for governor. You got other people out
That's
here.
big news. I mean, that's something I didn't really anticipate coming up this year. We've all known that Mike Duggan is somebody who's thinking about running for governor. Jocelyn Benson is the Secretary of State. I didn't know about some of the other folks who have kind of said, well, looking at it.
It's an open seat.
Yeah.
And obviously there are some big, well-known challengers in the race. But on the Republican side, you don't really have anybody yet.
Which is
And
fascinating when you consider historically the way Michigan votes.
Should be a Republican year.
Right?
I
We
mean,
go
if
back
you
and
look-
forth,
But
right?
it reflects the broken aspect of the party. They can't cultivate candidates because at this point they're still trying to put the party back together. I expect that'll change, but they really are letting the Democrats get off to a head start.
What did you hear up here that you think we take back in terms of collaboration, conversation, maybe policy making?
So let's talk policy. So that was politics. Let's talk policy. One thing that I'm hearing a lot about is affordable housing.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just
Everyone is talking
it
about
feels
that.
like that is just, I mean, we've always talked about housing, right, in Michigan, but I think about it when we're talking about these two parallels of wanting to grow our population, wanting to get people to stay here. We've got to find housing and affordable housing for people to, who are starting families, be able to afford.
And I think they're going to divert some of the SOAR money for that. $500 million a year comes into that fund for business attraction and development. And some lawmakers are wanting to dip into that for housing, for transit, for a lot of other programs, moving it away from corporate welfare into infrastructure development and social services.
And that's also talent retention, right? I mean,
Maybe.
What's interesting to me is that the way we use that phrase now, affordable housing.
Yeah.
Typically, you say that people think about poor people and their access to housing, and of course, it means that. And from a federal perspective, it will always mean that. But I get the sense that increasingly we're talking about something even bigger than that, which is, people just being able to afford housing in general,
I mean,
and to become part of the housing economy.
You're talking about young couples looking for a first home, harder with the interest rates and the inflation. I mean, the home prices over the last 2 years have just gone through the roof.
Yeah.
They're back to pre-bubble era, and that's not good news for a lot of these people who are already hit with 24% inflation over the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
It's a real crunch.
Yeah, and it's a statewide issue.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, right?
It's a
If you go to Grand
statewide issue.
Rapids, you go to Muskegon,
Right.
you go to Traverse City.
But it's just so fascinating to me because sitting around this table years ago, what were we all talking about? Infrastructure, transportation. Don't get me wrong, still hot topics. Still talking about fixing the damn roads. Still talking about mass transit and Metro Detroit, which we'll be talking about for the next 150 years.
Yeah.
But I mean, affordable housing again goes back exactly to what we're talking about: placemaking.
Yeah.
And low-cost housing for every income group was always one of the draws of Michigan, particularly Metro Detroit. You could buy.
That's gone now, right?
It's gone. You could buy a house here cheaper than almost any place, any major metro area in the city. And now you're like, how much are they asking for that house?
Yeah. Last subject, Detroit's wins give us an opportunity to, I think, do more things. But this problem with the Riverfront Conservancy that is still somewhat in the dark, but growing. It worries me.
This may turn out to be one of the bigger embezzlement scandals we've seen in this area in a long, long time. Yeah. It could be crushing.
And my concern is the faith that it shakes, that people have had in the riverfront, right?
And the excitement, not just the faith, but this excitement, and that it was for everybody.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was sort of the darling organization. Yes. I mean, Mark Wallace has done a fabulous job. You hate to see him go, but,
I mean, how it changes going forward could change not just the riverfront and how we think of that, but lots of cooperative efforts that we need to have take place.
That's the risk. Yeah, because this was the perfect example of that.
It was. We did it right.
It seems like that's the story here in Detroit. Something always kicks you off the rails.
It's why we can't have nice things. It happens over and over, right?
Is, right.
It's like a curse.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to give you guys one last chance. Fudge or taffy?
You ain't gonna change
okay,
your
you're both
mind.
wrong. Never mind.
Fudge.
I'm not inviting you guys here next year.
And you can go down there and give me about 3 pounds full.
Watch One Detroit, Thursday at 7:30 p.m.
You can find more at onedetroitpbs.org or subscribe to our social media channels and sign up for our One Detroit newsletter.